My good name is Mudhoni Njogu. I'm an advocate in Kenya, practicing for the last 10 years or so. I'm also the managing partner of Njogu and Associate Advocates. Njogu and Associate Advocates is a commercial law practice, but also as well, I double up as a general counsel to the Blockchain Association of Kenya. I'm also very much interested as a legal practitioner in the blockchain space. So I also do a lot of work as well within that particular spectrum. Of course, that doesn't come by itself. There's also the attachments of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. So I also double up as well in that particular space. So my simple and short answer would be that given the fact that a lot of African countries experience almost the same regurgitative problems. We talk about hyperinflation, overinflation, demonetization, debasing of the currencies. So there's a lot of instability when it comes to currencies. So when the idea came from Satoshi Nakamoto, I think about in 2009, where we sort of have a separation between the state and money, this also the background that also gave the African continent as well an opportunity to get away from all these central bank policies that don't seem to favor the local person who is within the economy. So that having been the basis, we now saw a lot of proliferation of what we call now the digital currencies. And that's why we see things like Bitcoin coming in, because there's no central government that is in between that, and is also, you know, sort of bringing along their monetary policies towards that. So I would say that would be the genesis of where cryptocurrencies emanated from Africa. That would be the genesis. What do I envision the digital currency will look like in the next 10 years? We have seen growth in terms of not only just now from a currency perspective, because we'll be looking at the currency and then we'll be looking at digital assets as a whole. When you think about things like Bitcoin, you're talking about, you know, transfer of value in terms of a currency format, you know, the whole trinity of money. You're looking at, you know, is it a store of value? We're looking at it as a unit of account. So when we look at it from that perspective, but it has now mutated into other things. So the future would definitely look at tokenization of so many things. Tokenization here basically just, you know, implication of the fact that it is a physical asset that has been represented in a digital space. Would also be looking at, for instance, if you're talking about land, if I wanted to buy land in a particular prime area, the way that tokenization works, that representation I can buy a piece of that. I can buy a piece of that because it provides as well liquidity to the developer who is actually doing that particular piece of land. So I see the future, there will be a lot of tokenization. I also see the future of digital assets in the sense that we'll also have now, you know, a lot of government coming also as well on board. We have seen that with what we now call the central bank digital currencies. We'll definitely see a lot of adoption. The other day, I think we saw a small country called El Salvador as well going through that route. Of course, there are a little bit of legal implications that come with that, but we see a lot of adoption in terms of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin being seen as legal tender. So my key highlights would be, we'll see a lot of tokenization, where there'll be a lot of representation. I think we've seen things like NFTs as well, the non-fungible tokens. The other day, it was interesting that the bank of the museum in Uganda has actually, you know, placed its artifacts on the Binance smart chain as well. So tokenization will be some of the key areas that we'll see, and of course, a lot of adoption from governments, and also a lot of adoption from institutional investors and institutional bodies moving forward.
My name is David Gitonga. I'm the managing editor of Bitcoin KE. So Bitcoin KE is a media outlet that covers the blockchain and crypto space across the African continent. Different African countries have different jurisdictions, but what we are seeing generally is that the regulatory landscape tends to be quite restrictive, especially for crypto companies or for anybody who just wants to get into crypto. So, and I'll give a few examples. Recently, we saw what happened in Nigeria. The Central Bank of Nigeria came out with a blanket ban on financial institutions and deposit-taking firms, restricting them from dealing with crypto exchanges. So that had a huge impact on the crypto space, especially for local companies that were, playing around that space. Now, again, when you go to the south of South Africa, we've seen what has been happening there. As much as crypto exchanges are allowed to operate, again, banks can wake up one day and shut you down. They can restrict you from using their banking services. So those are just some of the larger economies on the continent. If you look at the smaller economies, we're looking at Zimbabwe, if you look at Malawi, if you look at these other countries, again, the restrictions are there. Some of these central banks have come out and openly said or told the public, don't invest in cryptocurrencies. And of course, when you come out publicly and say that, can imagine then people will be apprehensive. Of course, crypto exchanges or anybody involved in crypto will have a few limitations in, for example, how many people they can reach out to, or in fact, local companies or fintechs, for example, who can work with them. So those are just some of the restrictions that we can see across the continent. So I think for regulators, we are at a stage where, too much regulation can stifle this innovation, but also a lack of regulation can also result in what's happening, for example, with illegal activity. So my advice would be they really need to understand this technology before they regulate. And again, South Africa stands out like a good example, a classic example. The regulatory sandbox there has been able to sandbox quite a good number of crypto startups. And in fact, we put out a recent article on Bitcoin KE that showed the lessons that some of these crypto startups are learning from being sandboxed and in effect also being regulated within that environment. So I would say understanding this technology, because it truly is a technology and it is going to change the way finance works and the way we buy and sell goods and the way we just send money across the world. So they need to be a bit more careful. Simply blanketly regulating may have adverse effects, down the road, and we really don't want that happening. A classic example is, for example, in Kenya, what happened with M-Pesa. If the regulator was too strict and never allowed the technology to sort of evolve and get tried out in the market, we would not have the mobile money environment that we have today. And I would say the same case, or sort of the same play is happening with crypto. You don't want to be too strict, but you also need regulation to sort of guide these technology in the right direction.
My name is Ani Akpe. I am the founder of African Women in Technology. I am a serial entrepreneur, and I've been actually an entrepreneur for the past, I'd say, over 15 years. Although I've always held a full-time job within the financial sector. I've been in the finance for over 20 years. And I basically have grown portfolios from 150 million to over 1.2 billion. So the question that's being asked of me is, how did I get into the crypto space? Being in financial technology, you see a lot of the things that are happening and what new currencies are coming into play. So a little over 5 years ago, when I launched African Women in Technology, we started paying attention to what's happening within the blockchain space. So after noticing what was happening with blockchain and some of the currency, we decided to start educating within our conferences about blockchain so that people could be familiar with the fact that this is what's happening with cryptocurrency, this is the reason why it's stable, and this is why this is the new digital asset. So a little over 5 years ago is when I entered the crypto space. So from there, it's been interesting, right? And seeing how much has changed. Well, cryptocurrency in the United States, of course, has exploded for the longest time. It's been being pushed for at least since 2007. And one thing that's really great about it is that people were talking about it, people were pushing it long before it got to this point. What it is in the US is that the cryptocurrency is not regulated, and it is certain regulations are state by state. So say, for example, I live in New York State. A lot of exchanges are not allowed to do business here just based on the way that their structure is set up. So some people don't want to go through setting up a business in New York State as it relates to having an exchange and what type of crypto they sell. We've had like Coinbase and I think 2 or 3 others that have actually established operations here, and they're very mindful of what they will sell to New Yorkers because New York has a very strict rule when it comes to cryptocurrency. Right now, when you talk about stocks as a celebrity, you could actually get fined because now you're pushing a stock and making mention of that stock because you can influence the market. Crypto doesn't have such rules right now within the United States. So you'll see Elon Musk tweeting about Dogecoin, or you'll see him talking about Bitcoin recently with all the latest drop and people either completely loving him or completely hating him for that fact. So because these rules are just not there as it is right now within the United States, it's being evaluated. People can kind of do what they want to do. They can put it into their accounting books. They can send money to whoever they want to send money to in terms of crypto. And none of these are being regulated. When it comes to financial regulations as it relates to fiat currency, there's so many rules and regulations of how much you can send over a certain amount before it's audited. They have the U.S. Patriot Act. They have the Anti-Money Laundering Act. So with those things that come into play when you're dealing with fiat currency, you can only send over $3,000 before you get flagged. After $10,000, you get flagged again, and it gets monitored and sent over to the IRS to see where this money is going and who's sending it to whom and why. Cryptocurrency doesn't have that, but the United States is currently evaluating these rules to see where and how they're going to step in to say this is what must happen. What everyone understands so far with cryptocurrency is that you have to do KYC and AML as it stands, and those are just basic, but it doesn't drill down into anything like you would with fiat currency. So it's being looked at right now, and it's being evaluated in terms of what new regulations they're going to put into place. I think that when it comes to cryptocurrency and the benefit of new regulations, we have to take a look at the fact that fiat had regulations and it didn't impact their movement and how money is moved. We don't like the inconvenience of having to wait for monies by a certain time just so that we can verify that it's from a reputable source. So that's the hindrance when it comes to fiat currency. No one likes the inconvenience. Crypto is going to be much the same way. No one's going to want to have to be worried about if they send $3,000, how will it be monitored, or $10,000. But the good thing about all of the regulations that sometimes come into play is that it does protect the consumer. The consumer may feel like I don't need protection, but as we know, there are a lot of cryptos, at least anywhere from 30 to 50 different types of cryptocurrencies that's being issued, coin issuance, at least maybe every other day. So with all of these new meme coins that are coming into play, as well as other regular crypto, it allows regulations to say, are you really a good company? And it could hold people accountable for selling things that really have no utility, no use, and they're basically a pump and dump. I think that it would be good in that sense where things that are coming out have to be justified and you have to send out certain information. I think that these regulations are only centered to United States as it stands. And of course, everyone in the United States uses VPN to purchase whatever it is that they may want to purchase. But when it comes to the United States protection, it does save the consumer. But I don't feel like this is going to be a thing where consumers are going to be happy about it, because right now they're getting to do what they want to do as well. So when regulation steps in, it may be beneficial to them, but people don't like rules. So, but those rules will help protect their monies in the long run, in terms of what companies can or can't do, how they market to them, and how they use their information, if any, because we know that it's all by IP, and then we all have our digital wallet addresses. So that's the only way they'll be monitored, but nevertheless, people don't want anyone monitoring them. That's why they wanted the digital currency, because it doesn't have the same restrictions.
So my name is Robert Chirunda, and I teach and practice law in Uganda. I am the convener of the Center for Law and Emerging Tech at Makerere University, but also a partner at Chirunda and Wasige Advocates. A few years ago, probably 6 years ago now, a friend of mine came to my law firm wanting to register a company to do Bitcoin trading and exchange. That then became Uganda's first cryptocurrency exchange. And my condition for registering the company was they would tell me what they were doing, they would teach me and get me involved. That really is how I got into crypto, actually. And I still work with those guys today. Is crypto regulated in Uganda? Yes and no. Yes and no, because we believe that within the current legal framework, there is enough wording to cover what crypto assets are and what they do. But the central bank, being the most powerful regulator here, does not want to admit that crypto is regulated. In fact, they don't like the word cryptocurrency because of the traditional understanding of currency. Why I say yes, it is because you have wording in laws like the Foreign Exchange Act, the National Payment Systems Act, that basically mean they're regulating both the platforms and what happens on those platforms. So what the National Payment Systems Act says is if you're moving any store of value, then you're going to need a license from the central bank. That essentially is crypto. And when you look at a certain part of the act, there are sections that are basically dealing with crypto. The Foreign Exchange Control Act has definitions that look like crypto. The Electronic Transactions Act, when it defines hashing and things like that, is basically defining how crypto looks and works, in fact. However, the perception among regulators is that they don't regulate crypto. That's the same thing with the Capital Markets Authority. The only regulator that is now actively pursuing this is the Financial Intelligence Authority, which regulates money laundering, because last year we had an amendment to the FIA to basically provide for virtual asset service providers as being accountable persons who now must register with the FIA and comply with the standard therein. So on paper, I'd say it's regulated and pretty strictly though. There's enough room to play, but the rules are pretty strict. And yet the perception among the regulators is that they don't yet regulate crypto. So what role does regulation play in improving legitimacy? It plays a pretty big role, actually, because it gives some sort of confidence to anybody in the space that, at least on the consumer protection side, governments will watch out for the novices, the people who don't understand what they're doing. It also sets minimum standards, which means that you don't have speculators, you don't have people who are just basically gambling, don't understand what they're doing, entering the space. However, it depends on what aspect of regulation we're talking about. When you start putting things like mandatory minimum core capital requirements, which is the case with the National Payment Systems Act in Uganda, then you're going to lock out people, because the way crypto works is really not the way that you would regulate banking, for example. If you want a crypto exchange to, which is the way the rules are written right now in Uganda, if you're saying anybody who needs a license must have a bank account to basically underwrite all the money moving on their platforms, you're not going to have anyone doing an exchange in Uganda or running any aspect of the crypto business here, because no one has that kind of money to just put in the bank and with the regulator and just have it sitting there. On the other hand, if you're driving transparency, if you're driving accountability, if you're regulating money laundering, then regulation is a very good thing, because then everybody knows who's doing what, where do we find them. One of the requirements in our National Payment Systems Act is you must have a local entity with a local board or people that can be found locally. So that's driving accountability, which is good. But if you tie that together with capital requirements, then you're going to stifle progress. So it really depends on which spectrum you're talking about. But on the whole, I'd say that especially for volatile spaces like crypto, we have to talk about which mode of regulation you're taking, but it would be a good thing by and large. So in Uganda, we're now talking about agile regulation, which means that your regs must be fluid enough to address specific issues as opposed to institutional regulation where you're saying them a bank must look like this, it must have a board of 10 people, it must have so much in core capital. Step away from that old model of regulation and come into the newer models. And I think the two that I see that will be dominant in Uganda are agile regulation, and some sort of self-regulatory organization will emerge, which will basically mean the market will have to regulate itself. And that will drive a lot of confidence in the market.
Hey, so my name is Mohammed Taisir, and I'm the head of BD for Flare Networks, and I do multiple things. So I'm actually the CEO of Destiny, which is our own family office, and we do have our own company, Drakentech, which does digital transformation consulting and training. We work with government entities, ensuring they have awareness about fourth industrial revolution technologies, how they can implement them within the strategies. We help businesses as well. And I've been focused mainly on the Middle East and Africa region, mainly started with the Middle East and starting to get to know the Africa part. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. So I got into blockchain back in 2017. I started looking into it, and I started looking about how to get involved in this industry really. And I wanted to, I got looking into ICOs, and from a perspective as an angel investor, I saw this as an amazing opportunity to start investing. But after I started looking into it, I actually got more, and I fell in love more with the technology itself, with blockchain. So I started studying, I got certified as a solutions architect. And then I got certified as an instructor, and I started traveling in multiple conferences, speaking about blockchain from a business perspective, about how businesses can use blockchain to enhance their business and to use it within their strategy, rather than just focusing on the cryptocurrency side. I do believe that cryptocurrencies will have a huge impact on the future and how businesses are conducted, whether it's through CBDCs or whether it's through NFTs and non-fungible tokens, digital identity. There are a lot of uses that will come into the crypto space that will utilize the crypto space, I think, in the future with blockchain, with public blockchains. You see what we're doing with Flare as well. So I think the future is bright. And for me, I'm just excited that I was able to get involved really. And early on, I remember a lot of people didn't understand what blockchain is. And for them, blockchain was Bitcoin. So that's kind of like how I got into blockchain. I just fell in love with it and I couldn't stay away. So the cryptocurrency landscape in Egypt is fairly primitive, really. It's non-existent because there are no regulations for cryptocurrency. It's completely illegal here. The central bank really issued a warning about using cryptocurrencies within Egypt, I think last month. But they are looking for towards blockchain and how they can use blockchain. And actually, they announced a project that they were looking into, which is a central bank digital currency called the e-pound. They announced that back in 2019 at the World Youth Forum in December 2019, that they were doing this. And they're actually looking at projects like IABIR that happened between UAE and Saudi. And you have the National Bank of Egypt, who's actually part of RippleNet. And they announced that back in early 2020, late 2019, but they just further activated it like last month. They opened the corridor between Egypt and the UAE through the National Bank of Egypt and Lulu Exchange. So they're not against blockchain. They're just haven't regulated cryptocurrencies, and as of now, it's completely illegal. I don't know whether that is going to continue into the future or not. There is no outlook on it really, but they are definitely looking into blockchain and central bank digital currencies. So I wouldn't rule out it like in the medium term future, but as of like the foreseeable future, it's completely legal. So is regulation required in this space? I would say it's very hard to kind of like, I would say to define what I would mean by regulation, because it's very hard to regulate blockchain. I always say this, blockchain is a tool. You can use it to do a multitude of things. So a good start is, I think, and a lot of regulators are taking that stance, is creating ecosystems where they can work with the private sector and work with blockchain companies so that they can understand the required regulations for these companies to exist.
Good afternoon. My name is Senator Iheyen. I am the president of the Stakeholders in Blockchain Technology Association of Nigeria, CBAN. I am also the lead partner at Envision Lawyers, where I head the blockchain and virtual assets practice. I got into the cryptocurrency and blockchain technology space early 2017. At the time, of course, I've been the lead partner at my law firm, Envision Lawyers, where we were perhaps the first law firm or one of the few first firms that started advising clients in areas involving blockchain and cryptocurrency. This was back in early 2017. What the crypto space in Nigeria specifically has been like is like most other countries around the world, especially developing countries, things are still evolving. As you know, blockchain and cryptocurrency, they are evolving innovations, and we're still in the early days. We don't have enough development in the space, even in terms of the technology, for anyone, whether you're an innovator, whether you are an expert advisor, whether you're a regulator, you can't be 100% sure about where this stuff is going to. And so in the blockchain space in Nigeria, for instance, we've seen a lot of adoption of cryptocurrencies, you know, especially amongst young people in Nigeria, because Nigeria right now has been the leading market in Africa in terms of blockchain, cryptocurrency adoption. And even in the world, Nigeria at one point, or even currently, is second to the United States in terms of Bitcoin adoption. So that's a very, very huge market. And it continues to grow. In Nigeria, we've had various developments, especially on the innovation part. We've seen local and foreign innovators come into the Nigerian crypto market to drive various products, from crypto exchanges to crypto wallets. And there are those who are even outside the crypto who apply some of the applications of blockchain, outside crypto strictly. So it keeps evolving. And I have to say that even though we're still in the early days, it holds a lot of promise. I can't talk about how the space is in Nigeria without mentioning the challenges in terms of the regulations in the space. As you know, and as in terms of very similar with other countries around Africa, there is no specific regulation of cryptocurrencies. So I wouldn't want to say too much about that at this point, but I would just like to say that it continues to evolve, and it's a lot of potential in the Nigeria crypto space, as I believe it is also in other countries around Africa, from Ghana to South Africa to Kenya. But Nigeria has been a leader in this space so far.
My name is Faith Abafemi, and I'm a lawyer based in Nigeria, and I currently work in the blockchain and crypto space, helping companies and projects with their legal compliance. Actually, I got into blockchain and crypto through writing. I was freelance writing, and I had some clients ask me to write about blockchain, and that was 2017. So I still kept writing about blockchain. Then by 2018, it then occurred to me that I could actually make this my love practice area. So I then began offering legal consulting services to blockchain companies and projects. Currently, the key regulatory bodies have a divergent approach to digital currency regulation in Nigeria. And when I mean the key regulatory bodies, I mean the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Security and Exchange Commission. I think a little bit of history would probably be appropriate here. Like, for instance, in 2017, the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Security and Exchange Commission issued a warning and a public notice respectively, saying that though people can use crypto, but they should be aware they are doing that at their own risk and cannot expect to receive or seek relief from the government if things go wrong. And then in 2018, we had the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC, also joining the bandwagon and publishing a special notice, which is basically also a warning. And in the same year, 2018, the central bank also published a press release where they said that digital currencies are not legal tender in Nigeria. And still in 2018, we had a member of the House of Rep named Solomon Adeolu, who called on the CBN and the NDIC to create a regulatory framework for blockchain through a bill titled "The Need to Regulate Blockchain Applications and Internet Technology." But however, we haven't heard anything else about this bill since then. And still in 2018, late 2018, we had the SEC deciding to come up with a committee and taxing the committee with the duty of developing regulatory policies for fintech in Nigeria, and this included even blockchain technology applications. For 2019, nothing really happened, but perhaps that was because a lot of major activities then happened in 2020. And one of such was that in June 2020, the CBN released a draft framework for regulatory sandbox operations. And this draft framework was approved this year, January. And the framework is that the CBN wants to focus on financial sector companies that use innovative payment products and services. And I am sure that this sandbox is also going to admit blockchain and crypto companies and projects. Then last year, September, we had the SEC also released a statement on digital assets and their classification and treatment. This actually received lots of attention because many interpreted it to mean that crypto is now legal in Nigeria. And so according to the SEC, anything crypto or blockchain related is deemed to be a security by default. So issuers were the ones who had the burden to prove that it is not a security. Like I mentioned earlier, the key regulatory bodies in Nigeria, SEC and CBN, have a divergent approach to regulating digital currencies in Nigeria. And so just about 4 months after SEC issued the statement on digital assets, we then have the CBN in February this year, asking banks and financial institutions to stop providing their services to cryptocurrency exchanges. Then the implication of this was that crypto exchanges that facilitated maybe crypto to Naira and Naira to crypto transactions, using APIs and payment service providers could no longer access these services until further notice. But anyway, that then opened the opportunity for peer-to-peer trading activities, which is probably what Satoshi Nakamoto wanted for Bitcoin. And a lot of people then incorrectly interpreted this to mean that the Nigerian government had banned crypto in Nigeria. But crypto is still not illegal in Nigeria.
Good morning. My name is Benjamin Arunda. I am a blockchain expert and a blockchain consultant in Nairobi, Kenya. So generally, what I do is on a day-to-day basis, I consult for individuals, startups, and corporate executives on blockchain and how blockchain can be adopted in different sectors. The digital currency regulatory framework in Kenya, and generally the regulations of crypto in Kenya, I would say that the approach that the regulators have taken in Kenya is, I would call it a hands-off approach, where the regulators do not really forbid or they have not banned maybe transactions in cryptocurrencies. Neither have they endorsed it. Yeah, so I would say it's unregulated because one, there are no clear regulations that you would say guides. There are no clear regulatory framework that guides transactions in cryptocurrencies or operations in blockchain or cryptocurrencies. So the players in the industry generally just bootstrap or generally just operate in a, I would say it's sort of a free market because there are no clear laws to guide you. At the same time, the regulators are just watching from a distance to see if perhaps you can maybe adhere to the existing laws, and if maybe your activities can cross-cut existing laws into other areas of law. For instance, you find like cryptocurrencies are not already defined whether they are securities or whether they are assets, and that, or whether they are currencies, and that should be the beginning or the first point of even starting to regulate cryptocurrency. And because we don't have this definition or this, we don't have these categories, we've not been able to categorize them, whether the nature of the cryptocurrencies, so it's even difficult to know how to regulate them. So even the regulatory sandbox that has been created by the Capital Markets Authority, I would say that it has only helped to promote blockchain technology to some extent, but to the extent that many blockchain startups want to also incorporate a token and or a cryptocurrency in their system, the sandbox does not create that avenue to admit projects that also have cryptocurrencies. So I would say that it's still a young regulatory environment, and perhaps in the future we may see a number of changes in the sandbox to allow projects that have cryptocurrencies to also be admitted.
My name is Kayode Babaride, and I work with the Africa Blockchain Institute as the Executive Director. Thank you. So in Rwanda, Rwanda is very careful when it comes to finances, money, and also has to do with transaction in Rwanda, because I mean the most priority for the government is stability, and we all know how volatile cryptocurrency can be. That does not mean that the government or the policy in the country is outlawing or banning or not even supporting cryptocurrency. Just like currently right now, the government and the policymakers are very looking forward to receive a lot of interesting literature and also resources to understand how best they can push and allow citizens to adopt cryptocurrency. But right now, cryptocurrency is not allowed in Rwanda because the policy in Rwanda does not allow people to make use of cryptocurrency. However, some people might be using it on because there's a recent issue from the central bank. There are people that deal with cryptocurrency at their own risk. So people can still deal with it on their own risks. But in terms of law and in big time open adoption, people or open trading here in Rwanda, it's not really adopted. So, but there's an incoming regulatory framework to see how they can support that to make it fully blown that people can now rightly start using cryptocurrency here in Rwanda.